Good evening. I'm so glad you joined us for episode 2. I'm Dr. D, and I'm here with our lovely guest today,
April Rhaynes.
And you learned a lot about April the last time we got together. April has graciously agreed to tell her story about her transition to us as it happens. So let's kind of get April into this. Y'all don't want to listen to me. April's the star here. All right, April, let's give the folks a little bit of a teaser.
Right.
Did you make the right decision?
I have to say that I could not have made a better decision, and I could not have made it at a better time. We talked a little bit before about how I was kind of slow rolling, moving my way through this, and I'm positive that at the time that I initially started talking about or thinking about starting gender affirming hormone therapy, I was not ready. Mentally, I was not there. I'm there now, and it's been amazing.
All right, and we were, of course, hoping you would say that. It wouldn't be a very good show if you came out, "Oh God, it's the worst thing I ever did."
Oh no! Oh.
All right, so you had a lot of time to think about this. You had to get your head wrapped around doing your gender treatment.
Right.
So tell us about getting ready for that first doctor's visit. What went through your mind? How did you prepare? Tell us about that day. And then what happened when it was all over? How did you feel when you left?
Right. Well, so, I think one of the first things that I had to come to was where I was going to seek out my treatment. And unfortunately, kind of where I am, I was in a position where our old physician had retired. We were assigned a new one, and I frankly just wasn't comfortable with going to him and starting to ask the questions. And so I sought out a place, and my choices were both about an hour and a half away from where I am now, Planned Parenthood or a women's resource center. And I opted for the resource center and reached out to them, and I made all of the, the pre-connections and the paperwork that needed to be done and financial disclosures and all of those things that we had to go through. And then suddenly it was time to schedule that appointment. And so one of the things that I had to first do was get blood tests, some initial blood tests, a full blood panel done so that the doctor had a baseline when I went in to talk with him. And I struggled a little bit with that. When you go to, I think, a center like that or to Planned Parenthood, they are just overworked, overtaxed. There are so many things going on, and you become one more piece that they have to deal with. And so I struggled for actually about a day and a half, just getting my blood work scheduled so that I could go in and have the blood draw done. It ultimately took phone calls and everything, but we got there. We got it done. I got my appointment scheduled. It was about 2 weeks out after having my blood done. And so then it was a matter of sitting down and waiting for the doctor. And, of course, we have that choice. Do we go in drab? Do we go in not presenting as we would normally do that? Or do we go to the doctor presenting as we see ourselves? And I guess it was a little bit easier because my visit was a video visit. It was not a physical visit, so I didn't have to hop in the truck and drive down there and walk into the office. Now, although I think I'm okay with that. I would have been all right with that. And I knew that I would have gone in that way. So the day came, and I dressed myself up as I would to go out anywhere. And I logged on to to the video chat room that I was supposed to be in, and all of a sudden, there I am face to face with the doctor. And he gives me the welcoming. He says, how are you? And we chat a little bit. And he says, well, so it appears to me that you already have started hormone therapy previously. And so you want to continue that? And I said, no, doctor, I'm here because I want to start. I've never been on therapy. And I'm not sure if he was pulling my leg, Dee, but what he said to me was, oh my gosh, you already look so feminine. And if there were any problems, any bit of nerves before that time, it was gone. I felt good. I was okay. And that began our discussion. So we went through the normal. I mean, it's informed consent. So, he had to go through and talk about all of the potential outcomes, the ramifications of hormone therapy. And he told me, what drugs we would be using and the dosages we were going to start and how it was all going to work. And asked me if I had any questions about all that. And ultimately, no, I didn't. I had done a lot of research too up front. And so I kind of knew where we were headed. And then he said, okay, I will submit your prescription and you should have it. If not this afternoon, then by tomorrow morning. And I'll see you in 3 months. So I logged off, I felt really good. I talked to my wife, let her know what was going on. And then I waited. And I kept looking for that email, that something that was going to tell me that my prescription was in. And I didn't get that afternoon. I got up the next morning. By noon, I still didn't have it. So reached out to the resource center again and said, what's going on? And so the response that I got was that it takes them the time for the staff there to submit the prescriptions, that it would be in by that afternoon. And so late that afternoon, which coincided with my son's arrival here, I got a notification from the pharmacy, from CVS, that they had it, that it was in ready to go and I could pick it up. But that meant really that I had to wait till the next morning because I had family coming in and I couldn't just run off, and go pick as much as I might have wanted to. I knew that was not the good thing to do. So that led to the very next morning then where I knew I needed to go pick up my prescription. So, I'm not socially totally out there. There are a lot of people yet. So I went in, my kind of most feminine, androgynous, drab version I can, and went to the CVS. And as I stood back behind waiting to get my prescription, I heard the voice of the woman who was up in front of me. And it's like, I know that voice. And she was asking stupid questions and telling the pharmacist their life history. And that confirmed that I knew exactly who this person was. And sure enough, she turned around and looked me dead in the face and had no clue who I was. My hair is just a bit different than it was the last time she saw me. So I picked up my prescription ultimately. And, I was excited. It's a major decision for us, right? When we get to that point, you make a decision to begin a new phase of your life, of transition, whatever that's going to be for you. And so I had brought a bottle of water along with me in my truck. And I went out and I sat down and I opened the bottles and I put one each of the pills that I needed to take at that point, an estradiol and a Spira. And I took a picture of it in my hand. So I still have that picture. And then boom, down they went. and the feeling of just, I can't say joy, but, just maybe relief that, wow, okay, I've done it. I've made that step. I've gotten there, right? I've begun this new phase. I drove home, and one of the very first things I did was come to CGH and to TGH and say, I did it. I did it. I've started. I'm happy.
We were waiting for that.
Right. I knew that people were as excited as I was in some cases, and were living that dream with me. And so I did come right back and start over there. So yeah, yep.
And honey, we were delighted to hear how you felt taking that first pill. And several people, as much as you can tell on a computer, there were several gasps when you told that story about you had to wait a third day to go get that doggone prescription. And everybody's like, pins and needles.
Yeah, like, will it never happen?
But it did. Right. So you start on your therapy, and you're marching down this roadway, putting pills in your mouth daily.
Right.
So here you are, you're 90 days into hormone therapy.
Right.
What's happened to you over the first 3 months? What's gone on emotionally? What's gone on physically with you? And then how do those things all kind of mesh in terms of your medical transition with your social transition?
Sure. Yeah. Well, first of all, I do have now 42 double D breasts after 90 days. So.
Yeah. Pretty long, girl.
No, that's not true. Don't ever expect that, right? So I think the first thing that hit me, Dee, and you and I had talked about this too, in a couple of the messages that I said, it was like my dysphoria just disappeared, within days of starting that. And what I realized was that was really kind of more euphoria over blasting everything that was going on, because it takes a while for all of the chemicals to adjudicate themselves, right, to begin to change that balance in your life. But I noticed fairly quickly within the first couple of weeks that things did begin to change. And as the euphoria probably began to drop, because it became more and more normal, right? As I got up and took those pills every day, and at night I took one. What I noticed was that my dysphoria had, if not gone, had lessened so much that I didn't really notice it, right? So it was, for me, I always kind of termed it as the bear. The bear was always out there kind of prowling around behind me, waiting to pull me into its grasp. It was gone. And I haven't seen it since. Hopefully it's moved on somewhere else, right? There are times when I can't say that I'm like fully, that the emotions don't come back, but those are emotions, right? We all have down times, things affect us. So I don't think it's any different, but I can tell you that emotionally, I do feel much different. So I'm kind of waiting for some of the emotional changes to kick in. I do get I'm a little more emotional. And it seemed like all of a sudden it kicked in at once. We had a dog had passed away a little over a year ago, now about a year and a half. And it was unexpected. She was only 8, and, it was cancer. And so we have a place on our property here where we have little grave markers with the ashes of our pets, of those dogs that we had lost. And so as I was cutting grass one day, I drove past that marker, and the markers have etched pictures of the dogs on them, their own picture. And I looked, and I looked down, and I looked at her, and I immediately just burst into tears. And it was like, oh my God, I can't control these emotions. So that's kind of slowed down a little bit, but I can still feel that emotional change. I'm much happier. I am much less distracted. I am not prone to anger as I was. I tended to have a pretty quick temper when I was really in the depths of everything. But so mentally, I feel wonderful. I feel amazing. I know there is a change, and the longer I stay on, the more that is continuing to change over time. I began to see some slight physical changes pretty quickly. It seemed like within a couple of weeks that my facial hair growth had slowed, and then the rest of my body hair growth slowed tremendously. So, I was an every morning and maybe twice a day shaver. And then for my legs, and I was every week. I needed a shave every week. I'm at about, I could go about 2 weeks now, and I've just got some light fuzz on my legs at this point. My face, I'm still like every day, but it's different. It's less stubbly. It's definitely, and I know it's not going to stop, but it has changed. It has changed tremendously. My skin has changed. My skin is smoother. My facial pores are closing up slowly. I am less. I have my skin is drier. I have less oil. I used to have to take a shower every day, or I felt like a crud. I mean, it just like I just couldn't. Now I get up and it's like, not too bad. I don't feel bad at all, right? And maybe I'll wait for a little while because I have stuff to do. And the same thing with my hair. Even though my hair was short, I had to wash it every day. And before I started hormones, I washed this hair religiously every day because when I got up, it felt greasy. Now it's fuller, it's less oily, and I get up in the morning and I pull it back into a ponytail or something, and I'll go a day or two without washing my hair because it just doesn't need it. So that that changed fairly rapidly. And again, it continues to change over time. My body odor has definitely changed a little bit. It's different. I used to have there was a perfume that I used, and my wife and I, one of the first things we did when I came out to her is we were trying to recenter ourselves. We went to an Ulta Beauty and we both tried perfumes, and we found the one that we wanted, and then we bought those for each other for our birthday gifts because we're both April birthdays. And so I put it on. I put mine on one day, and my wife was like, "Oh my God, how much are you wearing?" And I not just the normal. So like the next day I did the same, and she goes, "Oh my God, I could smell you reek. I can smell it all the way down the hallway." So I tried just like a really little spritz on my wrist, and so now I just kind of stopped using it because I don't want to reek. I really don't want to. So I'm trying to think, other physical changes. I mean, in a very PG kind of way, there's been a little shrinkage down south, and that I have definitely noticed that is there, which is all kind of predicted. All of the the normal reactions to the drugs, and so I'm trying to think. I think that's probably most of them. Trying to think off the top of my head if there's something I missed. Skin, hair. Oh, okay, yes, right. So I did. I missed. I did. The one that I led off with, which wasn't true, is really something that does happen. So, I guess. So what you're really doing to your body is you're almost putting yourself through a second puberty. And so within probably a month and a half or so, I began to get some tenderness behind my nipples, and itching, that became almost constant. And I've noticed over time that my areolae are changing, that they are expanding a bit, that they're softer, they're becoming puffier, and I have had some development. I'm not a double D. I'm not even quite at an A, I guess, but definitely. I've had growth in my breasts on both sides. So that's probably it. I guess I think we probably hit the majority of them.
Out of all those things, April, what is the thing that has meant the most to you with the changes?
Right. Definitely I went into this with my number one hope to be able to curb the dysphoria, right? To put the bear in check, to have the bear go away, and so that's happened, right? I'm there at this point. Some of the other changes are great. I'm not going to complain about anything else, but I also am realistic. I'm 70, coming up on 71 in April. I've started late. And so I can't have great expectations on, major physical changes. So, I'll take what I get. But really, this was about dysphoria. And what I'm trying to figure out though is, as I now go into this next phase, right? And, we'll talk about that, as we come out, because, I have gotten now an increased dosage. Based on my first 90 days. I'm kind of going through that process of thinking, well, where do I need to be? Is low dose okay for me? And then there's always that tantalization of, well, how good could it get? I'm feeling really good. Can it get really good? Where does that stop? Where does the benefit?
You also know that yes, we're so the same age. We're 70. Girls and boys don't go through puberty overnight, and we're not going to be there either.
Right.
But with all the talking that you and I have done over these past many months, for me to hear how much you had been relieved of the dysphoria, that was a part that touched me listening to your story the most, because you had such a rapid change.
Yeah.
With what you've been through so far, how does your medical transition relate to your social transition? What's going on in your life, and do you have any particular concerns looking forward?
Right. So I knew that when I began hormone therapy that there were going to be changes in my physical structure. Maybe not great, but there would be changes. And so I talked with my wife at that point as I started and said, I think it's time that I start to socially transition, because I'm not going to be able to hide all of this forever, nor do I want to, right? This is about becoming me. And so we started a plan on how we were going to do that. And so I started with family, and I come out to my family members now at this point, both my side and most of my wife's side. Some of them not sure that I'm going to, just because I don't see them very often. We rarely see them. So but so that was part of the process, and I had a lot of angst as I began that, as we all do, right? So as much as we know our family and our friends, there's always a fear factor, I think, in the back. I talked about that a lot with my therapist. There's a fear factor that they're going to reject us, and in some cases it does happen. I'm very fortunate that none of my family has done that. And they've embraced me. They've welcomed me. They've said, you need to do what you need to do to be happy, and whatever that is, we're with you. We love you, and we're with you. I also then decided that I was going to come out to my two very best friends, two women who worked with me at the college where I worked for me at that college, and I actually had hired both of them, and they became very good friends, my two probably closest friends at this point. And so I decided I did it initially in a letter, and I emailed them a letter with the heading of surprise. And so they almost both immediately came back to me, not in total shock, but said, oh my God, we want to meet, we want to talk. And so we arranged to have lunch together. I think I sent it on a Friday, might as well give them a great weekend. And then we decided we were going to meet on Monday. So we picked a restaurant that is relatively close to the college. And April hopped in her truck and drove down and met my two friends and had a very, very great and open discussion with them. They asked a lot of questions, and it was very empowering for me just to kind of get it all out, and again, then have the acceptance of friends. Do I have concerns? Sure. I'm in an area of the world that's not the most open to social change, and so I am fairly well known. It's been 5 years since I retired, so I've in some ways I guess been forgotten. But so that social transition is going to be it still continue to be a challenge for me, I think, a little bit, and kind of figure out how do I move ahead and what am I doing. Again, it's just it's part and parcel. It's got to be with my wife in mind as well too, because whatever I do affects her, and vice versa. So we always try and lead with each other. So I think there's some concerns from that perspective. I don't think I really have any physical concerns. I know that there are potential side effects of the drugs that I have, that I'm on. I understand those, and I accept those. I don't think I'm shortening my life significantly by doing this. I do have to be careful, and I know there are things, like the blocker has a tendency to raise your potassium level, and when I tested, my potassium level was above normal, and so the doctor looked at it and said, "You got to make sure, don't eat bananas, cut back on the French fries, watch the potassium that you're taking, and hydrate yourself a lot." And so so I know there are things there that I have to be cautious of and things to look for, but I don't really have medical concerns. I am going to start with a new doctor. We found a new primary care physician that I'll start with at the end of this month. And she's a young, fairly new graduate of a local medical college. We attended the same college, so I haven't met her yet. So, but I'll go do that. And I'm going to ask for her to refer me to an endocrinologist within the system, because ultimately I would like to have that face-to-face discussion the doctor that is working my care. Not that I've not gotten good care. I have. I've gotten very concerned care, interested, asking questions. So, again, don't think I have big concerns. I have to continue to monitor myself and to make sure I'm doing the smart things. But we have to do. So, yeah.
But you mentioned Lynn, your wife. Now, what are the things that she's seen happen to you? What has she noticed And then, of course, we wrapped up your first interview talking about your wife and how she was looking at the future and concerns. Does she have any?
Right. So, I think she would tell you that she sees that I am much happier. We've had this discussion. She has seen the difference in my personality and my attitude, in how I respond to things. I don't have that quick temper anymore that I had when I was really depressed. I guess maybe a little more open, a little, I'm willing to try things that maybe I wasn't previously. I think the mental aspect has been big. She's noticed that, and was happy. So we have a spa, a hot tub, and that we like to frequent in most of our mornings, where we go out and sit for 15 minutes and soak those old bones and tired joints before we start the day. And so we were sitting there, I don't know, maybe it's got to be about a month or so ago. We were sitting there, and she looked at me and she said, "Getting a little busty, aren't we?" So that's not a figment of my imagination. It is actually there. She helped me do a new measurement the other day, just to kind of get a feel and make sure I'm kind of tracking. I know where I am on a bra so far. So she's noticed that, and she's noticed my hair most definitely, in how it's changed, and skin, and we're doing a lot of the skincare stuff together. Moisturizer night and day, and she knows that aspect has changed physically, and then, as I said, the mental aspect. Does she have concerns? Yeah, I'm sure she does. And we mentioned a little bit, I think, in the first segment, about when a partner begins a transition like this. In some respects, it's almost like the death of a partner, right? That as much as we like to say, "Oh, I'm the same person," I am that same person to a large degree, but there are changes. I just noted those changes to my personality, right? Which happen to be good changes. But at the same time, there are changes that, when you've been married for almost 51 years, next month, that take time for the partner to get used to that change. I know that we're there, that we're together for the duration, but there are times that I know that she's still, she kind of looks back, and there are still times when she probably misses that other person that I was, and so I try very much to be cognizant of that, and those times when I am kind of more in the androgynous look, I don't mind doing that, because I know that's important to her as well. And so who knows? I may ultimately, and I have a very good friend who has done this, who kind of bounces back and forth. I'm not going to be a complete bounce and back. There is always a femininity, because she has not started hormones. There are things that I just can't hide anymore, right? So the hormones will make that change. But I also don't mind, like, my wife she would like marvel at the fact that she's, "Oh, why do you always have to get dressed up? Why do you need full makeup? Why can't you just, slap on a t-shirt and jeans and go?" And you know what? I can slap on a t-shirt, jeans, and go now and not feel bad about myself, where I couldn't do that before. So, that, I guess, in and of itself, is a mental change that I've noticed. I'm less worried about how I look. I always want to look nice, and I enjoy putting on makeup and looking good. But I also, if I'm going out to cut the grass, I'm pulling that hair back in a ponytail and I'm not putting lipstick or mascara on either. I'm just going out and doing it. And when I look in the mirror, Dee, I see April. I see me. And that, if I could kind of peg the big woohoo of gender affirming hormone therapy, that's been it for me. I've found myself. I can see myself. So.
Okay. April, you and I have talked hours about your life and the changes and what's going on with you and Lynn. And I'd love to keep doing the same thing here, but we're going to try to keep up to our 30 minutes or so per episode. The next time that we get together, you'll be 6 months into your therapy.
Right.
And we'll ask you to give us that big, look at a half a year for both you and Lynn. Is there anything else you'd like to share with the audience before we say goodbye?
No, I just, what my intent is that hopefully others will see this and take something from it of a positive nature. Our community, whether it's on CDH or TGH, our transgender and cross-dressing community is so broad, so wide, so accepting. But we all look for something to help us along the way. And so, my hope is that this is going to help others as much as, it's kind of helping me to kind of talk my way through it with you. So I guess that would probably be it.
Okay. Well, folks, again, thank you for spending your time with me and with April. And I'm sure you'll be looking forward to seeing April again in 3 more months. All right, folks. And if you have any questions, I'm going to speak for April. I'd be willing to bet she'd be happy to hear from you at both CDH and TGH. All right. Good night, folks. Good night, April. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.